It takes a lot to shock the internet these days, but a Montreal TikTok star has managed just that. PinkyDoll's mega popular live streams rake in thousands a day and have confused and delighted millions. On today's show, why PinkyDoll is such a viral success and why it matters. I'm Emil Niazi, sitting in for Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. If what you're about to hear is a little confusing, don't worry, we got you.
Grab, balloon. Oh, gang. Ice cream so good. Fire. Take your lily sleigh, huh? Meow. That was so good. Coconut, pop, amazing.
I love it. That's PinkyDoll, a real person from Montreal who is playing a video game character. The official term is non-playable character, or NPC. And if you've never played a video game in your life, this is like a background character, essentially furniture, and they don't interact unless you, the main character, interact with them. Now, every time you hear PinkyDoll say something like, ice cream so good, she's reacting to a virtual gift from a fan. And those virtual gifts translate to real money. This is her job, and it pays her thousands of dollars per live stream. And ever since her content crossed over a few weeks ago from TikTok Live to Twitter, well, people have opinions, as they do. Today on Commotion, what's happening here, and why is PinkyDoll having such a moment? Rebecca Jennings is a senior correspondent at Vox who covers internet culture, and Samantha Cole is the senior editor of Motherboard. Sam, I want to start with you because just listening to the clip is not quite enough to get the full majestic experience of who PinkyDoll is. So for those who haven't seen it, can you just sort of tell us what's happening here? What are we seeing in a PinkyDoll live?
Sure. So it's a lot. It's very colorful. It's very active. It's kind of frenetic. I would compare it to like Candy Crush. There are lots of things scrolling around on the screen. There are emojis coming up. There's, like she's doing motions that correspond with what the little icons are. So like ice cream comes up while she's saying ice cream so good. She's also like licking. There are little filters that are being applied, little like crowns and cowboy hats that also correspond to different emotes and reactions. It's so much. And you're also getting the view counter, which is another, mesmerizing thing in itself. It's, ticking like, 20,000 viewers and up every live. So it's just, I think that's part of why it's so mesmerizing is it's so much to take in.
Yeah, it's like visual chaos. And I love that sometimes she's popping popcorn kernels with her hair straightener.
Yes. Yeah, that's also happening. She's holding a hair straightener with a kernel in it. And you're kind of watching that to see when it pops.
For a while, I thought that I did not realize what was going on. And again, that's just what is so great about these videos. There's so much happening. Rebecca, you're kind of my, you don't know this, but you're my unofficial guide to the dark corners of the internet. What was your reaction when you first saw PinkyDoll?
When I first saw PinkyDoll, I was like, yes, absolutely yes. Let's go. Let's introduce the world to how weird TikTok lives are. Mm-hmm. And for those who don't know, there's TikTok and then there's TikTok Live. TikTok Live is infinitely weirder than TikTok itself. TikTok Live, you scroll there and you're like, why am I watching this person sleep? Why am I watching this person like sell like a carnival barker, a bunch of like crappy clothes that they have like in this weird, uncanny studio space? TikTok Live is where people go when they... It's sort of like this exercise in grabbing people's attention in the weirdest possible way. And I think PinkyDoll is an expert on this, as we know.
You actually called it CoComelon for adults, which as a parent of two young children, I was like, yes, wow, nailed it. But for people who've never seen CoComelon, what do you mean by that?
So CoComelon is a show on YouTube for kids that just is like cartoons of really bright colored babies in bright colored spaces playing very plinky music and singing like nursery rhyme songs that are sort of like auto-tunified and, again, kind of uncanny, but there are like 1 million CoComelon episodes on YouTube and elsewhere, and they're all kind of the same, but all kind of also kind of different. Pinky Doll is kind of doing that live with her body. Like she's like finding ways to like catch someone's eye in the most unexpected way possible. And so what we're left to do as adult viewers with brains that are probably bigger than an iPad babies, we're like, whoa, like, what's going on? Why do I want to watch this?
Yeah, but just barely bigger than an iPad baby. So at this point, Samantha, Pinky Doll has thousands and thousands of followers on TikTok Live and OnlyFans. And at this point, I'm sure it's just skyrocketing. Why are they so captivated by her? Why will they pay for her to say, gang, gang, ice cream so good? What's happening?
Yeah, I think there's something to, I mean, it's obviously the biggest draw is the interactivity of it. It's, you know, when you're interacting with a live, that's the big part of it. So you're in chat, you're kind of talking to the creator, and hoping that they respond to you. Mm-hmm. And so the way to get them to respond to you in this case is to pay them in these little like gifts. So I think that's a huge part of it. I think it's also, it's like you said, it's like the CoComelon effect where like, we don't really understand why we like it. But we definitely do. I think even if you are disgusted and disturbed by it, you like it a little bit. Mm-hmm. That's why you keep watching it. It's why you're obsessed. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a huge part of it is just kind of that, like the interactivity, like, oh, she reacts to my thing. I'm going to do another, and send another and another and a bigger one. And then, you know, that's how she keeps people hooked. Yeah.
Rebecca, everything to me makes sense on the internet when you just say the F word, and that word is fetish. And this, right? As soon as I see something that I don't understand and someone goes, oh, it's fetish content, I'm like, oh, absolutely. Perfect. Makes complete sense to me. So this has been described as fetish adjacent. Can you just unpack that for us a little bit? What does that mean?
Yeah, sure. So pretty much everything on the internet can be a fetish. Anything can be a fetish. And that's why the lines get so blurry and why they're so kind of hard to understand if you're not like always on the internet. An example of like fetish content on TikTok that is also like not explicitly sexual, but, you know, people are like, oh, this is fetish content if you're watching it for that purpose. A lot of them are food related. And so you'll see you know, maybe like a hot girl making this kind of gross food, like a mac and cheese casserole with like random other stuff in it. And you're like, why would anyone make that? Like, that sounds disgusting. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, oh, it's fetish content. Because, you know, maybe because they like the final shot of the woman tasting it, you know, they want to get to that shot. And that's sort of like the big release, not to like get, you know, super graphic here, but like, that's what they're after. But obviously plenty of people watch that and they're just like, oh my God, I can't believe people cook like this. How weird. And that's why they watch it. So people watch things for different reasons. I think, you know, someone who doesn't like regularly watch this kind of stuff can look at someone like Pinky Doll and be like, oh, like that's kind of ASMR adjacent, kind of like the, you know, we get the same pleasure out of watching her as we watch maybe, you know, watching hydraulic press videos, which I love, where it's like they have this big metal tube that crushes random objects. And you're just like, whoa, didn't think that would blow up that way. And so I think she fulfills kind of that role as someone who's just like satisfying to watch, but also there are a bajillion people who have fetishes for like video game and video game adjacent kind of characters or culture. And she's sort of using that as part of her look as well.
Well, I'm Emil Niazi filling in for Elamin Abdelmahmoud, and you are listening to Commotion. If you're just tuning in, I am talking with Rebecca Jennings and Samantha Cole about Pinky Doll, the Montrealer who is making thousands of dollars a day on TikTok Live doing this for hours.
Ice cream so good. Gang, 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 pop, amazing. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, thank you, baby. You got me feeling like a queen.
Samantha, Pinky Doll is, of course, a real person. Here she is in the middle of another stream.
Je m'écoute pas, je vais venir te prendre moi-même. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Vas-y, va mettre ça dans ta chambre, c'est pas un jouet. Balloon. Meow.
Okay, I'm a parent, so I've gotten really good at shushing my young kids during a Zoom, like just with my eyes. I don't have to say anything. But what I love about that moment is you just get a glimpse into this real person. She's stepping out of the NPC role to talk to her young son in that moment. Every parent knows that tone that she just suddenly took on, and I love it. But this was a real break in the wall. You know, this was suddenly, who is the real person behind Pinky Doll? Her name is Feda Sinan. Sam, what do we know about the real Pinky Doll?
Yeah, so the real Pinky Doll is obviously a mom. She is 27. She lives in Montreal, or she's from Montreal. I started this business on TikTok because she had gone home to a step-parent's funeral in Seychelles Island. And when she came back from taking that time off, she had lost her cleaning business and she wasn't able to restart it, is what she told me anyway. So she was like, I got to feed my kid. I got to pay rent. I got to make some money. So she decided to give TikTok a try. And obviously that worked out amazing for her. She was instantly able to kind of find this viral niche. And she's also on OnlyFans. She's on a couple other like content platforms. And when she first started all of this online content creation stuff, she was making about $250 a day, which is pretty good, but not amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, when she went viral, when people started, you know, that crossed over onto TikTok or onto Twitter from TikTok, and people were shocked by the NPC stuff, that turned into $7,000 a day and up combined on all of her platforms. So yeah, that's a glimpse into her life and what she does. I think it's a very common story. I think it's something that a lot of people do. She just happens to be someone that a lot of folks, you know, resonated with, were disgusted by, were fascinated by. You know, like us, we're like, hell yeah, this is awesome. So yeah, she's captured the imagination that way. But that's a little bit about her. I don't know a ton about her.
I mean, we know enough, and that is that she's incredible, and she is changing the way that we think about TikTok lives and that corner of the internet. Thank you both so much for talking to me about this. Samantha Cole is the senior editor of Motherboard. Rebecca Jennings is a senior correspondent at Vox who covers internet culture, and they were both in Brooklyn. Marianne Faithfull, Bianca Jagger, Anita Pallenberg, Marcia Hunt. In some circles, these iconic women have become synonymous with the Rolling Stones. But as we've come to know, they are so much more than girlfriends, wives, and muses. In fact, without them, the Stones might not even be the Stones. Yet their influence on the band has always been underplayed, an asterisk in the Stones' epic story. Elizabeth Winder shines a light on them in her new book, Parachute Women. I had a chance to sit down with her recently. Thanks so much for being here, Elizabeth. I'm so excited to have this conversation. Now, let's start with the music that we're hearing. Parachute Woman by the Rolling Stones. Mick Jagger and Keith Richards wrote that song. It's loaded with sexual innuendo. So I'm curious, why this track for the title of your book?
Well, I guess I sort of interpreted this song in my own way. I'm a sort of visual thinker, and I imagined these women in parachutes coming down from the sky, like lighting up their imaginations and introducing them to things. And just that's how the Stones saw these women, especially Anita Pallenberg, but really all four of them.
I like this idea of them kind of being plopped into their lives. You know, something that really stood out to me that you wrote was about who they started as and who they became. Because I think if you're of any generation, you see them as these like cool, sort of effortless rock gods.
That was the craziest part about writing this book, realizing how uncool and naive the Stones really were at the beginning. Even in 1965, where they certainly were a successful band. But aside from Brian Jones, they were just wearing little trousers and sweatshirts that their mothers had bought them. They, none of them except for Brian had even smoked marijuana before, they were, Mick Jagger only read James Bond novels and did crossword puzzles. They didn't know about any of these. They knew nothing about art and frankly didn't have much of a desire. And then all of that changed with Anita Pallenberg and Marianne Faithfull. When Anita Pallenberg came on the scene, she actually, Keith and Mick have both said many times in retrospect, they were terrified of her. I mean, Keith has said in his memoir, she scared the pants off me, and I think that was her effect on these men. But, very quickly, she introduced them to art dealers, to artists, to writers. Marianne Faithfull, who is so deep and is so deeply literary, introduced Mick to so many books and ideas that he never would have even come in contact with. History. She even got him interested in the history of lace and fashion. And of course, Anita really introduced the Stones to LSD, which completely opened up their world for good and bad.
What about the music itself? Because, unlike Marianne Faithfull, even Marsha Hunt to some degree, Anita didn't write music. She didn't have a presence on their recordings. So how did she influence the music side of things?
Mick had tremendous respect for Anita in terms of taste. And he trusted her taste, her good taste, well beyond fashion. He came to her when he had questions about how to remix something for the song like Stray Cat Blues. He would say, am I remixing this the right way? And she said, no, it sounds too tinny. It needs more bass. And he would follow her advice. She also had a hand in writing the song You Can't Always Get What You Want, which is one of the most famous Stone songs of all time.
And then, of course,
Marianne had a bigger influence on the songwriting itself. Mick would come to Marianne and say, help me out with this. I'm stuck here. What do I do here? And they would be kind of writing these songs together. And of course, she got absolutely no credit for it.
And what songs were those?
Again, to bring it back to the song Sympathy for the Devil, one of the most famous Stone songs of all time. It was completely inspired by Marianne because I had mentioned that she introduced Mick Jagger to all these different books and all these different writers. Well, she gave him the book, Mikhail Bulgakov's Master and Margarita, and Mick was just blown away by it. And the song is entirely based on that. So it's not really about the devil worship or Satanism, as many people at the time thought that it was. It was completely based on this incredible work of Russian literature that he would have never encountered had it not been for Marianne Faithfull. And then another example that is a little darker and that is harder to talk about because it's just so upsetting. She wrote Sister Morphine and it stayed on the shelves for 2 weeks and it was pulled because Decca did not like the idea. They didn't want the scandal of a woman singing a song about morphine.
Sister Morphine, turn my nightmare into dream.
That's wild.
Then, a couple years later, the Stones decide to record it, and Marianne was not credited.
Our colleague Tom Power actually sat down with Marianne Faithfull about 1.5 years ago, and she touched on a lot of the stuff that you're talking about. Take a listen to this.
Do you think that people get something wrong about you? Like if you were going to set the record straight on something, what would it be?
Oh, there's a lot of things they get wrong. It's hardly worth it, I mean, I was seen as this incredibly sexual being, which I'm not. Then I was seen as a hopeless junkie, which I was a bit, but not like they thought. Lots of things, yeah. But I don't care to set the record straight. I think people should think what they like. They may be wrong, but let them be free to do what they like.
I mean, what do you think about that? There's a lot of powerful things in those words, and I'm curious to get your reaction to what she's saying there.
I'm sort of blown away by her reaction because I respect and admire it so much. I think it kind of is the ultimate power move to not care enough to set the record straight and to not try to argue with people and prove who you are or who you were or who you weren't. And that just really speaks to Marianne's total self-possession and real independent sense of who she was. But it also really speaks to something that I was hoping to touch on and really illuminate in my book. The way the women are treated in the media it is starting to change a little bit, but it was horrific, and it was horrific for so long. I mentioned that at the time that Marianne first met the Stones and then became involved with Mick, she was promoted as this sweet, innocent, yet sexy English rose. And then after the 1967 drug bust, when she was famously wearing the nothing but the fur skin rug, the media could not wait to pounce on that and just play it up and make it seem as absolutely vulgar as possible and just completely twisted. And that, of course, was very, very hard for her to handle. And then when Marianne, like many people, did begin to struggle with drugs a little bit, the media pounced on that too, in a way that they never did with someone like Keith Richards, who also had drug problems, but he was treated in a very, very different way. When I looked at I combed through so many old articles of the late 60s and into the 70s about these women, particularly Marianne and Anita. And I saw so much similarities between that and kind of like the tabloids of the aughts, if that makes any sense. And I do not mean to compare them to like Lindsay Lohan or Paris Hilton or whoever, but you could take anybody. And the paparazzi just couldn't wait to get a picture of somebody looking slightly disheveled or somebody looking slightly drunk. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't, but it was a sick obsession, and there are a lot of parallels there.
Well, reading the book, Elizabeth, it just really gave me a whole new perspective on the music and also on these women, and I'm so grateful to have this conversation with you today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to talk about it.
Elizabeth Winder's new book is called Parachute Women: Marianne Faithfull, Marcia Hunt, Bianca Jagger, Anita Pallenberg, and the Women Behind the Rolling Stones. She was in Washington, D.C.
It is the evening of the day. I sit and watch the children play. Smiling faces I can see, but not for me. I sit and watch as tears go by.
That's a bit of As Tears Go By Marianne Faithfull. That's a song she released before the Stones came out with their version. And that's it for the show today. I'm Emil Niazi, sitting in for Elamin Abdelmahmoud. Thank you so much for listening to Commotion.